If anybody has a written question, we haven't received any written ones. We've got quite a few that were given online. But if you've got a written question, do you want to bring it forward? Otherwise, we'll get the panellists to say what they couldn't say in their 7 minutes. We're going to start this section by watching the Ambulance Wish video. Thank you, Cameron. And sorry, sitting in front of it.
Unfortunately, we see in Queensland and across the country that people are often a bit trapped in hospital at the moment because there's not enough aged care beds and other places for people to be that are not as for a serious acute, now illness. And hospice is a home-like environment. It is based on a movement in the UK from, 1950s.
Dame Cecily Saunders.
And Dame Cecily
1969.
Saunders. Yeah, 60, but she was in 50s they started them, wasn't it? Anyway, so and Queensland did have a hospice in Brisbane called Mount Olivet. My mum used to work there and I used to go there as a little girl and run through there in bare feet in the 70s. But we don't have as many now, but Queensland does have them out in regional areas more, and we want more here because if you're really unwell and you want to die at home, there's chances that it's difficult sometimes for people to be able to attain that. And people don't want to die in hospital, nor should they, unless they really need to be there, because often you don't need all that noise and all that treatment. You really just want a peaceful place to be, that you can be looked after and cared for well. And so a hospice provides that, and especially, people under 65 in Queensland, for instance, if your family's working, you don't have anyone else to look after you and you can't afford to pay for somebody to come in and look after you, then you would probably have to go to a hospital, sadly. So, we would prefer to see people in hospice.
So if I can answer that, Dame Cecily Saunders is often considered in the palliative care world as the mother of the modern movement of palliative care. And she opened St Christopher's Hospice in London in 1969, and I know it well because that was the year I was born. So I always remember that year. Also the year man landed on the moon. But Dame Cecily Saunders paraphrased, I guess, hospice care into palliative care, and it's now become a specialty within medicine. Prior to that, it wasn't really recognised. And end-of-life care was really often the work of the church. And we've got beautiful photos of the history of palliative care and people dying in churches and cathedrals around Europe where they were cared for by the nuns who had zero to no nursing experience. But hospice care was very much about your journey home to God, which is kind of from the Latin roots. Palliative care is pallium, which means to cloak or to cover symptoms. So it's really been a modern discipline, palliative care, since the 60s. Well, 50, how old am I? 57 years. So hospices are really that home away from home. And if I can indulge the group, it's actually my journey into politics is fighting for funding for more hospices in Queensland. So my history as Vice President of Palliative Care Queensland had a couple, Paul and Gabrielle Quillen, come to me who said, there's no children's hospice in Queensland, Kerri-Ann. We've got to change that. And as VP of Palliative Care Queensland, we knocked on politicians' doors, red, blue, green, anybody that would take us, saying Queensland needs a children's hospice. This is not good enough. And we managed to get a bipartisan commitment of $10 million from both parties at the time. Whoever won would deliver it. And at the time, Tony Abbott won in 2013. There was an LNP government in state. Lawrence Springborg was the health minister. And as a proud LNP member, it's the LNP government that has delivered Hummingbird House, a children's hospice at Chermside. And that journey took me as a palliative care registered nurse to being the state member for Redcliffe. So when we hear Louise talk about policy, I am here as a product of my career in palliative care and fighting for funding for people at end of life. And absolutely we need a hospice here in Brisbane North, and I do have a... Yep, you can mention the petition. Go for it.
There is a public petition on the Queensland parliamentary site. So if you just search public petition palliative care, it will take you there. And it is calling for more resources and supports for Palliative Care Queensland and hospices and community palliative care and hospital services as well, so across the board. Realistically, whilst there's been a strategy that uplifted palliative care across the state over the last 4 years, it's an ongoing venture. It can't just stop now. We need to keep growing this because we have got an ageing population and more complex chronic illness, and palliative care needs to be much bigger than it is. We will have much better care across the board if we had more palliative care.
Absolutely. Changing gears a little bit, we have a question here from a Sue who said, could you please tell me more about prepaid funerals? So I think, Sam, you might be best placed to answer that. Yeah.
So prepaid funerals, there's a couple of avenues for it. Some businesses, companies will provide you with the ability to put the money aside directly with the funeral home. So you can prepaid. Some of those plans, depending on the terms and conditions, will either lock in a price or state it for a set period of time. One of the dangers of that kind of product is if anything happens to that funeral home, which can include the sale of the funeral home, which has happened, that price lock-in is no longer necessarily honoured with a new entity. So for Cornerstone, one of the ways we look after it is partnering with Shoreplan. The reason we do that is so that if anything happens to myself or Cornerstone or whatever, it's your finance that you've put aside is still protected by a Shoreplan, who, as I've said, has been around longer than the average lifespan of a human. So we trust that they've got the best interest at heart to look after the finance side of things. And essentially, it's a good way to put the finances aside. What you put into the fund is generally, I think it always has been exactly what you get back. So it's a good way to put that money aside without that risk. They still obviously, with any sort of financial agreement, it's best to check with your financial advisor as to what to do, but it's a good way to put that money aside. And when it comes to the funeral, if there's excess funds in that funeral bond, that's made back to your estate. We don't just take the amount that was in the funeral bond. It's whatever the difference is either invoiced to the family if there's a deficit, or is returned to the estate after. So that's sort of the two options.
this follows on from that. How do you help people and families who have little or no funding for funerals? Because that can be challenging, can't it?
Absolutely can
Yeah.
be. So there is a couple of options. One of the easiest ways and quickest ways of actually looking at those same-day loan companies is one way. We've had families who have looked for that. Shop around is another thing. It's not a bad thing to get prices and ask around and see, well, what's it going to cost? There is in Brisbane, the way we sort of compare them is based on the very basic non-attended cremation as the bare minimums required. And some in Brisbane are charging about 7,000 or 8,000 just for that. We're charging 2,590 is our price. So there are options out there, and there's not really too much difference between what can be offered. The other option is if there really is no funds in the person's estate, you can apply to access your own superannuation. If you're waiting then for probate, or you're waiting for the estate to settle, you can get reimbursed for any funds that you do put in yourself personally to manage the funeral costs. So there is options. The government does have options available to families who genuinely don't have any assets. So there is plenty of options to explore. But at the same time, a service doesn't have to be a massive, all the bells and whistles. We've had some lovely services where we've had 4 people in a room with the coffin and spending that quiet time together, sharing stories, all the way up to having a service. We had a funeral in the stadium here at Redcliffe in KO Stadium for the young footballers. So you're able to scale it depending on what it is. But I don't think, me personally, it doesn't actually change the value of that person's life and the value of that moment shared. And sometimes the smaller, more intimate services have been absolutely wonderful.
Beautiful. Kat?
Thank you so much. I think there is somebody here that has a little stall out there. If you could raise your hand, that does talk about funding and the Centrelink and how to navigate through. Yep.
Kate.
Yeah, so I might be a good person to talk to, because there are payments and things like that you can be eligible for. There's like a $5,000 payment that you can receive when someone passes to help towards some of those costs as well. And I think, Lou, just quickly as well, the paperbark one that you attended.
Yeah, so there are different types of funerals. I did honour the life of a very old friend of mine who was like my big brother, really, but he was an Aboriginal man who didn't actually know where his country was from, and I'd known him for 25 years, and when he was dying, I said, what have you got organised? And he had nothing. So we did a will, and he got that sorted with his family, who he was a bit separated from, and I was able to get one of my nieces to help me with finding someone that could do a cultural service for him. And there's a woman in just over the border in New South Wales who does tap into Queensland, who's she's called Paperbark Death Care, and we were able to paint him in his own ochre and wrap him in a tea tree bark that we'd harvested that morning, whilst one of his friends played the didge, and we all sat around and had cups of tea with him after we'd wrapped him up and put flowers and she oak and stuff into him. Yep, it's beautiful.
The next question is quite broad. It just says, where is the best place to find information online about palliative care? Would you say there's a font of all wisdom? I mean, Palliative Care Queensland in my mind, but if others have other places that you think there's good information or sound information?
The internet doesn't know everything, but no, that's not where I'm going with this. But unfortunately, that also means that information is spread far and wide, and sometimes it's reliable and sometimes it's not. So I think that going to websites of organisations like Palliative Care Queensland and Palliative Care Australia that's the place I go first for what we would call public-facing knowledge. In other words, information that targets, here I am again, talking about the general public. Then there are others that are suitable for more clinical information or for more formalised information, like Care Search is the name of a repository that a lot of us access from the professional world. So it depends what you're looking for, but you've got to be really careful because some of it's shonky and some of it's not real because it's AI generated. But I would always recommend going to the existing bodies like Palliative Care Queensland, and you also then have links off to other places, and some of it can be really specific and some of it can be. Okay, so resources in the bags and out at the stall for more, and on the website. So.
The next one's very practical, and normally we do have somebody talk about legal and financial elements, which your plan has alluded to, but one about wills, and where is the best place to get information about wills? Michelle, possibly?
There are, of course, there's your solicitor. You can go to the solicitor, particularly if you've got a complex will where you know that you would like to have things distributed correctly, all your wording correctly, and then having somebody there that knows that you've got the capacity, that you've done this will of your own free will, and have your signature witness with them, and they will be able to help you appointing executors. Then you can dwindle it down to the simplest thing of filling out a will kit, which you can pick up from the newsagent or from the post office. And again, it's just asking you who it is that you trust to be able to execute your will afterwards, and being able to then outline what it is that you would like on a personal level to provide, to give to people, and then just really the rest of your assets, the rest of your whatever you've got left, where it will go and how it will be broken up. Just making sure that you have your signature witness by two independent people. One can be a JP if you would like, and have another independent person. Don't make it family. Don't let it be anybody who could be considered or misconstrued as being someone who will ultimately benefit from anything that you've said. Everything has to be very, very clear, and it has to be, so there is no issues. I've only had one phone call back because there was a different pen used on somebody's will, and I was just available to witness that will. Of course, I had nothing to do with it. It was just purely knowing that that person could sign and that was their document. But it was done in two different pens. So just consistency, just like all the legal documents, your enduring power of attorney, Advance Health Directive, be consistent in how what you're using for it, so it doesn't look like a patchwork quilt in the end, because it can then be questioned for its validity.
I was going to say, maybe can we talk about the public trustee?
Sorry, and of course, public trustee. They will do it for free for you, and you don't have to make them executors. But if you, in lieu of having nobody else for finances, they will be your executor for finances. And if you have no one for personal and health matters, they will be able to put the public guardian in for you, because they will do an enduring power of attorney for you. They will charge you if you don't make them the enduring power of attorney for finances. So they will charge you for that, but otherwise they will also then do your will, yes. And they hold on to it, and they will execute your will like anybody else would be if you went to a solicitor, and there are the usual costs involved. People think that it should be for free, but it's not. If you need some sort of a lawyer advice, there has to be some sort of monetary value to that.
And you don't need to be palliative to get your will in order. Strongly recommend that all adults over the age of 18 organise a will, because many of us here have cared for people that don't have an active will or enduring power of attorney, and it can make things extremely difficult, especially if you've got complex family situations. Next question to everybody on the panel, and we might start with you, Terry. What is legacy making?
The work that I do with the Charter for Compassion, we talk about three elements. An understanding of our common humanity, that we're all the same. Just like me, nobody wants to suffer. Just like me, everybody wants to be safe and happy. That opens us to compassion, and the way we express our compassion needs to be exercised with wisdom. So a lot of my thought at the moment, as I'm ageing and working in aged care, is what does a legacy look like? And for me, it's around, particularly as we're ageing, what's the wisdom that we have gleaned from our life experience that we want to share with those that will come after us. And it's really good if we can do that in our lives, but if not, to think about ways that we can share that story beyond our living. So for me, a legacy is around the way in which we embody and express our wisdom so that it will continue in the lives of others.
Personal reflection on legacy and legacy making. Before I was an academic, I was a community palliative care nurse, and at times I worked and lived in the same community. And I'd walk down the street, be it Woolies or something, and somebody would come up to me and say, "Oh, John, I'll never forget what you did for Dad," and throw their arms around me. And I'll say to myself, well, that's good you haven't forgotten, because I certainly have, and I don't know who you are. And it's hard to remember everybody, you know. So when I reflect on my legacy, I think about an iceberg, and, you know, you see the top third. Is it the top third you see of an iceberg? And then there's all the stuff beneath the surface that I don't see. So my sense of legacy is that some of it I'm going to know about, and that's lovely. I don't need it. But it's very reassuring to me to know that I have impacted a whole lot of people beyond my knowing ever, and that perhaps the way that I've influenced somebody's experience of caregiving and grief is something that they've passed on to somebody else, as much as I'm the beneficiary of others' legacy too. So I have the iceberg view of legacy.
A legacy comes up a lot when I do Advance Health Directives. You can't sit down and start having these very personal conversations with people about what's important to them, what it is that gives their lives meaning and quality. And when they start talking to me about it being family, being grandchildren, being able to live independently, and let them remember the person that I am now, and not hopefully what I may become later if I am no longer myself. So that's when I start saying to the people that start talking about these things and start writing down what you know is important for you. I already, even at 59, I'm already saying that my legacy for my grandbabies and my family is that I would not want to be kept alive in a vegetative state, so that the only time my grandbabies would see me is to come and look at me, and I can't play with them. I will not be able to respond to them. I will not be able to do what I would want to be doing as Nana. And it doesn't matter if it happens to me next week. The legacy will be their memory of me and who I essentially really am. And that is my quality of life and how it is important to me. So that's how I look at my legacy.
I think for me, legacy, it sort of brings and boils down to someone's character, and I think the impact that they have on the lives around them. There's a quote, I don't know who says it, but the true measure of a man is what he does for those who can't do anything for him. And I think that a legacy in of itself doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture or a monument or your name up in lights. It all comes down to those small moments where your life has impacted someone else's life in a positive way. So I think for me, legacy making is about making the decision every day to try and be a positive impact in the lives of those around you and who you interact with.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, Sam. I think I've been really fortunate. I've had some beautiful jobs, I've worked as a nurse in all sorts of settings, and I worked in the top levels of the Commonwealth Public Service in policy, and I hope that brought positive change across Aboriginal health and Torres Strait Islander health and disability and aged care. but fundamentally, I see my legacy as being somebody who is able to know, love and be loved, and that I leave behind children and grandchildren who also love people.
Thank you. Legacy building and making for me, it can be in so many different ways. Just a few examples in the children's space. You can get little teddy bears now where you can actually record heartbeats and have that placed inside, or you can have little recorded voices of loved ones. Just recently, my best mate's mum passed away of an aneurysm. It was quite sudden and unexpected at 63. And then when I got a call from her to meet her up at the hospital, none of that stuff had kind of been progressed in terms of being able to have some rituals and some moments with family. So we just got a little tree, some branches and some twigs from outside, and we actually just got all the family members, including the loved one that had passed away, and got their handprints and made the leaves and stuff out of the handprints on the tree. So it can be so varied, locks of hair, all those sorts of things.
And Ambulance Wish Queensland is one way that people who have the privilege and the opportunity to create that legacy with their families. And I know Rudo, is Rudo still here? Rudo has started a beautiful storytelling business after the tragedy of losing one of her children to cancer. And Rudo, as a nurse, sorry, I hope you don't mind me sharing your story, found that writing was one way to be able to keep the memory of their daughter alive, their son, I'm sorry. And so she now helps other people record their stories. And so that is a beautiful way. I've worked with Karuna, I'm sure as many of you have. They're a service at Hendra, and they have had social worker students that will actually go out with clients and help record their stories. So I think recording stories is very powerful, and if you have the opportunity to do that before you're really unwell, to share those stories with your family. Not all of us have the privilege of having a book written, but if you're interested in legacy making, I would certainly chat to Rudo from Everlight Stories. We've got another question. I think this might be for you, Kat. For First Nations people, can there be consideration for a designated area within palliative care units so that family of mob can gather to say their farewells?
Thank you. Good question. So yes, most health hospital and health services now will very much try to facilitate those sorts of things. Obviously, with health and safety regulations, there's fire alarms and things like that that we have to navigate with, fire and smoking and things like that. But what we really encourage at the moment for any person, and I think this is applicable to anybody in the room right now that may endure any form of loss of a loved one, I think it's important to note that you can bring their story to the bedside as well. So what we're doing at the moment, some beautiful interventions where we might get some water from country and run it through a water feature. We might actually have photos and things like that. We can get them projected onto the roofs and into the walls. So if the patient's repositioned onto their back or their side, we can have those things projected onto the walls. We can have sacred sites projected onto the walls. And just recently we've developed a program with Charleville Observatory and also the one at Mount Omni down there, the observatory, where we can actually get live star stories and things like that from people's country and have that projected. So there's some beautiful things that we can do. And just remember that it doesn't have to be clinicalised. We can take the beds outside. We have people that pass away along the riverbanks. We have caring at home resources now where, we can actually go out to the person. Did you want to add something?
Just also, we can do return to country wishes as well. So we've been able to reunite families. So we have taken people home even down into New South Wales, to Tari and other places to be back on country. With Stradbroke, Blackwater. And we also have brought people down from the outer islands of the Torres Strait to be with someone who was dying that we couldn't get that person home. And we've brought people down from Kawanyama to Brisbane and, so to be with somebody as well. So because there's sometimes you can't get people back to country, but we can bring community and that feeling of country back to them.
We also do have repatriation in Queensland. We're quite blessed. There is some red flags around it, but that does cover costs to get somebody. So if they are having to come from country to access healthcare and then unfortunately do pass away, then we do have funding. And a lot of the traditional owners now are starting to put some legacies away from the stolen generations that we've fought really hard to retrieve. And a lot of those traditional owners now are starting to have those put away so that if someone from their traditional country does pass, that they have some money and resources available to help those families with those costs as well.
Thank you. This is a question that came online. I've got all of my legal end-of-life paperwork almost sorted, but I'm interested in planning my end-of-life service in regards to ahead of time, like music, words to say at the farewell, whether I have a cremation or an aqua. That's it. Sorry, I can't read the rest, but how's the best way to go about planning the service ahead of time? I guess
Sure.
that's a little bit like funeral planning, but to the
Essentially.
nitty-gritties and the detail.
So there is resources available. Leah, who you would have met on the way in here, is running Honouring Life Education. So she's put a lot of effort into making a website that has all of this, a lot of the information here today as well is on that website to give you a bit of guidance. For Cornerstone Funerals, we do pre-planning with families, which is no obligation, so it's a free service. You can sit down with us and you can pick my brain over what can I or can't I do. And I can explain to you about alkaline hydrolysis, which is the aquamation. Whatever it is that you need, I'm always up for a coffee and chat about these things. So we can provide that. Most funeral homes will provide the ability to pre-plan your funeral at no charge for you to just sit down and go through all of those details, which is really important. But if you're not at that stage, you're wanting to talk with anyone in particular, I'd highly recommend Honouring Life to go and have a look at the funeral planning aspects on there.
In the time that we do have left, Terry, you want to answer that one?
So the funeral directors can help you with that part of the planning. A celebrant, either a religious or a secular funeral celebrant, can help with the planning, and you can plan your funeral or life celebration, whatever you want to call it, in advance, and getting to know the person that does that, understanding your kind of spiritual practice or your religious belief is really important, particularly as we're moving into a more secular kind of environment. People are often looking for a spirited rather than a religious celebration, but often the case is that there are still people attending that from a religious background. So how do you do that in a way that's respectful for the person who's died and for the different members of their families?
Yes, certainly. Michelle?
So I'll just go back to the last question about respecting cultural, religious and spiritual wishes. That is also a very large question on the Advance Health Directive and the Statement of Choices, because that is something that if you can't speak for yourself, we want to be able to support, because we know that those are things that are essentially going to be comforting for you and meaningful for you at end of life. And if you can't speak for yourself, then we'd like to know that those wishes are being respected. So please, when you look at the Advance Health Directive or the Statement of Choices, make sure that you do fill in what is going to be important, because we are a huge melting pot of cultural and religious and spiritual values. And you may be it might be a latent thing from way back in your childhood when you had a religious upbringing. You may not be using it anymore, but please make sure that you mention that if it's still something that's going to be important to you, by having some sort of a spiritual or religious person or feelings in the room, even if it's family, being able to talk about what was important to you. Please make sure you write that down, because that is the stuff that we would like to respect for you as well. Thank you.
Okay, in closing, one thing you want people to take away from today, if you could Empower them with just one thing. Terry, we're not going to take questions from the floor, sorry. We've done that in the past and sometimes it's got out of hand. That's why we've asked people to do it on paper. So, one thing, take away, 30 seconds, go.
We don't know. And the not knowing can be okay. And attention to your spiritual care in your life and at the end of your life can hold you in that not knowing space.
John.
Connect with one another so that the journey of dying and death and grief and remembering isn't done alone, but it's done in connected ways.
Dying is like childbirth. You don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know where you're going to be. You have no idea what it's going to look like because every one of them is different. Just make sure that no matter when it is, that you've got something written down, you've talked to family so they have some ideas about what it is that's going to be important to you.
I'd say that planning ahead is something that's critically important for looking after your family. Letting them know what your wishes are is such an important thing to give them that peace of mind and solace. And we just don't know what our time limit is, how long we have, and to make sure that you make every moment last and provide a positive impact on the world.
Yeah, so I guess more along the planning lines of things, make sure you know who's in your tent knows you. So often people have people in their tent because it's the oldest son and they're not the person that's going to actually know you and carry out your wishes. So whoever it is you write into your EPOA and your Advance Health Directive and all those other things in your will, make sure that they are the people that are executing or that are your attorneys, make sure they understand you, they know your wishes, and they will act on your behalf, not on their own. And that's why sometimes it's good to have maybe a by-majority thing happening, and sometimes it's not your family. And also there's some beautiful books out there you can buy to write up the things that you think you want for your funeral before you go and talk to anyone at all.
Thank you. Mine's self-determination. So it's not about a one-size-fits-all approach. It's about your story. So there is no definition of what a good end of life looks like. It's your definition of what a good end of life looks like. So create it and evolve it and celebrate it and let it be uniquely yours.
Beautiful. Thank you. Please join with me as we thank each of our panellists. You can take your seats or you can stay there. I'm just going to wrap up with a lot of thank yous. As I said at the start, today doesn't just happen. And Leah, who is standing over there to the left, has certainly been the key person pulling this all together. Thank you, Leah. But she is awesome at organising, and I totally am grateful for you. To Shore Plan, thank you for your sponsorship again of this event. Is Kimberly still here? She had to leave. To Cornerstone, thank you. Sam and I had a coffee 3 years ago at the Belvedere and said, hey, let's do this. And 3 years down the track, I hope you feel that it's been of value to you. Also to City Point, Cameron, thank you so much for your expertise. And the beautiful slides. Did you put them together? Oh, Sam did those. They were beautiful. Thank you. Thanks for being totally tech savvy, and to Angelica as well for hosting us. It's a beautiful facility. We're very grateful. To our panellists, to Kat, to Louise, to Sam, to Michelle, John and Terry, thank you for your time and, more importantly, your hearts and love in this space. Thank you. To each of our stall holders, thank you for joining us today. We hope that for those that have had time to meet and greet and talk and take some of the information away, that you've found practical assistance today, as well as your hearts being stirred. I'd also like to thank Connections Catering. They're the youth enterprise, social enterprise at Redcliffe Area Youth Space. They're young people who are doing a Cert 3 in hospitality who've provided the morning tea today. And is there anybody I forgot? My staff, Shakina, Eleanor and Kathleen, who are out there, and to Justin from my office. Thank you. We will send out a survey Sam, I believe we did that last year. If you've got feedback about other guest speakers or topics that you would like us to explore, more than happy to receive your feedback. But in closing, we do have the raffle prize. Thank you for those who've been able to donate to Ambulance Wish Queensland. And we will draw the raffles. We've got $300. Wonderful. Plus, more than $300. So thank you for your generosity. Thank you, each and every one of you, for joining us this morning. We hope that it's been of value, that there have been conversations in the hallway out there over a cuppa or with the stall holders that have been also valuable, not just from the front. And look for an email in the next week or so, receiving some feedback from you. If you'd like to see us back here next year, we'd love to host again.